the beat. The beat.
What's up, everybody? Jat and Riv here in the heart of Singapore, where the second group stage of the 2014 World Championship will be taking place.
Yeah, 24 games, 8 teams, all competing for those 4 spots in the quarterfinals in Busan.
So don't touch that browser. The World's Preview show starts right now.
There could not be more on the line in this single game.
They have to focus on what is at hand, and that is winning this next match.
They make the comeback!
Hello and welcome to the World Preview Show. I am Trevor Quickshot Henry and I'm joined by David Freak Turley, along with our trio of guest experts. The evil geniuses Mitch Crepo, Force Bulls, Yiliang Double of Ping from Counterlogic Gaming, and on-game netcaster Christopher Monte Cristo Michaels.
And this week the action shifts to Singapore for the second part of the 2014 World Championship group stages, as the teams from Groups C and D battle for one of the 4 remaining spots in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, but before we find out who our experts think will be making the trip to Busan for quarters, let's actually take a look back at the 4 teams who already earned their way to the next round of Worlds last week in Taipei. First up is Group A, or the Davids and Goliaths as we called it here on the preview show, and starting out the 4 days of games with the Group A giants, Korea's Samsung White and China's Edward Gaming. This was a matchup that Samsung White really just grabbed the lead and held for the entirety.
Yeah, it was kind of the story of Samsung White the entire way through the group stages. As many Korean teams are, they're an impeccable team fighting team. They always seem to find a way to get all the kills, and then all of them barely live throughout the fight. Even the cleanup kills from Imp here, he was also phenomenal the whole way through the group stage.
Yeah, 4 for 0 in that particular engagement. At 27 minutes on the clock, Samsung White dive between Nexus and Inhibitor and are just rampaging through Edward Gaming's base.
And we did see this team was actually quite good at closing out many of the games here. They were pretty much fearless in their dives. Imp was occasionally over-aggressive, but once again, another great example of a team that knows how to dive. None of them basically die while doing it, but they still managed to pick everybody off.
Yeah, fantastic performance. This led Samsung White to a 6-0 record in the groups. Next up, it was actually David taking down Goliath as AHQ took on EDG, and this was a game where EDG really struggled to maintain control and a great hook from Green Tea.
It was an absolutely phenomenal hook from Green Tea. It was the only way AHQ was in on this game at all. They weren't able to flank because of some good wards from Edward. But EDG, they played this weird sort of poke siege comp that they're not really that well known for. And you saw it stall out here. Thankfully, again, Green Tea landing some hooks. And because of this, they actually managed to win the game. And it made it a 1-to-1 record overall in the group stage between these two teams.
Yeah, there was one of those phenomenal hooks that we kept talking about. Green Tea at 45 minutes, managing to land one onto Name, the AD carry that we spent a lot of time talking about. AHQ clean up the fight, and this pushed them for the win.
And you can see on your screen right there was Westor, the Zed. He went absolutely off this game, and they did finally manage to push down the Nexus. This actually brought us, again, to a 1-to-1 scoreline in between these two teams. Both these teams went 3-3 in the group stage on the overall record, which meant we were actually heading to a tiebreaker for which of these two teams was actually going to move on to the quarterfinals in Busan.
Yeah, it's 100% right. Edward Gaming unable to break the hold that Samsung White held in the group stage. So once we get to that tiebreaker game, this was to determine which team was going to advance to quarterfinals. And Edward Gaming, they came out swinging, dominating Green Tea. His Thresh was banned away. His Leona simply wasn't up to the task.
Yeah, very good of EDG. They learned their lessons from Vixen bans. They also managed to get themselves out of their lanes much more quickly. You on Caston especially, I thought was great overall in this series and just made a lot of plays. You had an almost Baron steal here from Nas, but it wasn't quite enough.
Good flash from Clearlove, managing to get himself in there, taking the Baron. Once again, Edward Gaming cleaning up the team fight with a massive 10k gold lead, and despite the kills being even, it was all about EDG. So with the win, Edward Gaming moved to the quarterfinals to face their Chinese rival Starhorn Royal Club. Now, gentlemen, all four of you predicted that both Samsung White and Edward Gaming would be moving out of the group and into the playoffs. You were all correct in that. So let's take that aside and start with Group A, talking about some of the things that impressed us, some of the things that stood out. I'm going to start with Crepo. What's your take?
Just the sheer amount of dominance that Samsung White just displayed, and I felt they didn't even have their foot fully on the pedal. They were holding back, especially game once against EDG. They played their best, and then they kind of found out, like, yeah, okay, we're better than you. We're just going to play a little slower right now. And I'm just really looking forward to full power White in just like later in the games.
Yeah, and Double Lift, we saw Name eating some hooks from Green Tea. What was your take on his performance?
Yeah, China is a region of great AD carries, so this guy's the best of the best, considered the best AD carry in China, and I expected much more consistent positioning, better laning, but he just got stomped in lane by Imp and just missed position, almost threw their chances at making it to quarters.
Well, he's not a lane monster like Uzi, and in fact, they frequently lane swap against Starhorn Royal Club just to get him into the late game. But what was the most surprising was his lack of presence in these team fights. These traits that he's really known for, eating those hooks, being too far forward, the positional errors. Him and Deft are positional carries. Uzi and Imp are those big-time playmaking carries, but Name just didn't show up. This isn't the same guy who won 3 seasons of the LPL.
And overall, it was interesting to see how the regions actually compared to one another, though. Unfortunately, Taipei Assassins had not a very good run, but you saw AHQ, the #2 team from region people were calling, kind of counting out. They went the distance against Edward Gaming, the #1 team of China. Like, that's a pretty darn good performance there. Like, hey, you don't have this necessarily giant pecking order between the various regions.
Yeah, we'll have to see if that actually comes true this weekend. But before we do, the Davids and Goliaths weren't the only teams playing last week in Taipei. We also had Group B, or as Jat and the fans at home had dubbed this group, the Veterans. So we'll start off the action with the rematch between the two teams that most of the analysts and you guys at home picked to advance. China's Royal Club and North America's Team Solo Mid. So this is TSM versus SRC. It was the second time they did battle, and it was a close game, but a great Dragon Steal from Amazing led to some control that TSM never lost.
And this was pretty incredible because TSM adapted very well throughout the group stage. This is a very disengaged, counter-engage heavy composition. Royal Club just dives right in. Shockwaves like that from Bjergsen. Great equalizers from Dyrus as well. Just makes it a really easy team fight to win. TSM actually managed to combat the Starhorn Royal Club strengths.
Yeah, really strong performance from Dyrus on that Rumble. Once again, laying down a pretty good equalizer, zoning AD carry out of the fight, but it's all on Wild Turtle as he goes untouched and just cleans house for the North American powerhouse.
Yeah, you really can't understate how much that equalizer actually did for the team fight. Even though it didn't deal 1,000,000 damage, it removed all of the damage from the very Uzi-centric Royal Club. So this was TSM saying, you know what? If they win here, maybe this team can actually take #1 in the group. And if you beat one Chinese team, maybe you can beat another in the quarterfinals. This was a game TSM had to win.
Yeah, and in order to set themselves up for that tiebreaker, they would need to take down SK Gaming later in the day. But before that could happen, we did actually see Starhorn Royal Club taking on the Taipei Assassins. And this game went real aggressive, real early, and BB was really out of position. He gets punished for sticking under the tower.
Yeah, we honestly saw this a lot from Taipei Assassins. A fairly large number of early game misplays by the team. It was pretty hard for them to get out of the first 15 minutes. And while the game didn't mean much for TPA moving out of the quarterfinals, it did mean that if Starhorn won this game, they would have a much easier time getting first place seed out of the groups here.
Less than 2 minutes later, a double bubble coming down from Zero allows Uzi and Zero to get themselves and grab some kills. I think Uzi's still going to be saying #worth with big smiles on his face from the player cam. Taipei Assassins really not showing up in the group stage. We see Starhorn Royal Club with a massive lead, cleaning house with a good tidal wave, and really this was just one for the books.
Well, something that this team is honestly very good at is these team fights, is diving very aggressively, and if they can keep Uzi alive, which they do right here, then they're in pretty good shape, and it's just cleanup at this point. Starhorn Royal Club 5-1 in the groups, pretty darn good run for them.
And of course, this did set them up for that tiebreaker. If it were to happen, it would mean that Team Solo Mid would need to take down SK Gaming. Now, of course, this is SK back at full strength. Sven Skeren returned to the roster. And truthfully, the game was very even, very close for a long time. But Team Solo Mid, they just went for a risky Nexus push, and it didn't work out.
Right, they went for the game-winning push here. They got one of the turrets. Dyrus actually TPs in late, and because they're fighting in SK's base, TSM's positioning is all completely wrong. Look where Wild Turtle is. Like, people have called out that he wasted his W early on, but realistically, he's surrounded anyway. The range doesn't matter when people are all around you, so TSM, they limp into the wrong kind of fight. SK are actually able to basically win the game off of that team fight, running all the way across the map.
Amazing's face says it all. Samsung White, we will see you in the quarterfinals. Thanks to SK picking up a win and Sven Skeren being denied the sweet, tender affections of Freddy. It does mean that Team Solo Mid will be facing off against Samsung White. So once again, majority of you guys did actually pick both Starhorn Royal Club and Team Solo Mid as the teams that would advance from the groups. I won't mention that Doublelift got it wrong. Well, I just did. So let's actually start with Doublelift. What was your thoughts on the group and what we see out of these 4 teams?
Well, I just want to point out that Starhorn Royal Club, the last thing I would describe them is clean. These guys win very sloppy in my opinion, and they got kind of exposed by TSM in their loss. Their weakness seems to be just counter-engage because all they know how to do is go in. So I felt like it could have went either way. If TSM didn't have that loss to SK, which really could have went either way, then I thought TSM could have swept that group and made it out in the first seed. So Starhorn Royal Club, I feel, is very fortunate to have that first seed, and we'll see how well they do in the quarters because I feel like they are a lot weaker than I expected.
Yeah, that was actually the point I was going to make. Thank you for that, Peter. Yeah, basically, how much that one game ended up mattering. SK against TSM right there. TSM should have won that, and that makes a difference between TSM facing White in the quarters or EDG, and that for TSM, that can spell the difference between basically what likely is being predicted as a stomp for White to actually potentially making it to semifinals, which would have been really big. So that one game just like swayed their fate entirely, and yeah, unfortunate.
I can't agree with the fact that you say that TSM should have won that game. They fell behind pretty far early. I think they were even lucky to be able to execute that mid lane push. Yeah, it was disastrous, but to even get to that point with that fed Vayne, I think was very fortunate for them. And if we take a look at SK over the course of the group stage, I really want to highlight Freddy's play because he stepped up. And over the past season, he's been kind of gaining ground. He's considered one of the top laners in Europe, and he did work on that SK Gaming team. I was very impressed by his play on the world stage, really showing that he's a top-tier top laner.
He has shown phenomenal growth from the time that he played in AAA. He used to be very solid there, but people will just dismiss him really easily. But he has really stepped up, and he's really surprised me as well.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, and honestly, I just liked, once again, sort of same story as Group A, the regional parity here. Number 3 team from Europe, 1-1 against the number 1 team from North America. The number 2, very nearly the number 1 team in China as well. Starhorn Royal Club right there. So you see all these teams very close together in skill, and You know, I just kind of wish we could have seen what would have happened if SK had their full lineup and, you know, Svenskeren hadn't made that mistake.
Yeah, big thoughts indeed. All right, so with the first 4 teams locked into the quarterfinals, the world's bracket looks like this. The biggest giant from Group A, Samsung White, will face Group B's runner-up Team Solo Mid on Friday, October 3rd.
And then in the bottom half of the bracket, we've got a rematch of the Chinese regional finals. Group B's top team, Starhorn Royal Club, facing off against the Chinese champions, Edward Gaming, on Saturday, October 4th.
Yeah, now before we discuss which teams we think will be filling in the rest of the world's bracket, it is time for one more look back at Group Stage 1 as we hack into the player comms of AHQ and Edward Gaming for a special Worlds edition of All Chat.
AHQ could still potentially cause a big upset here. If they could take down EDG, they still have a chance of qualifying.
露露美 TP 小峰可以看一下，他们要挂线。你们跟我到吗？要上了，要上了。
He gets hooked once again. This is real bad news once again.
我干姐，我干那个，他死，陆先死，解析，他没闪。露露出来呀，露露出来呀。
They can take Baron, or they can say, screw the Baron, let's go for the win.
They're gonna go right up that mid lane, Joe. They want to answer the inhibitor. Let's see if they can do it. 5 members shoving it on the turret.
What the hell is happening here, ladies and gentlemen? AHQ are turning this game on its head.
冷静。大绝15秒，许光可以，去。
This crowd is lighting up and ready for AHQ to take a victory.
他。
Oh my God, Brian is going low here, but he himself has got a guardian angel.
他 杀 AD。
Koro is still in there. They're focusing on the next. And the Nets has got to finish it. They're managing to do it. They're taking AHQ. Beat Edward Gaming. Can you believe it? Insane scenes here in Taipei. Wow.
There are no words that can do that play justice. I have goosebumps watching that again.
I think the crowd did it justice.
I completely agree. All right, guys, let's actually move on to the teams that will be playing this week in Singapore. And first up, we'll actually check out Group C. And just like last week, we're going to turn to you guys in order to help us pick a slightly more exciting name for the group.
But you mean Group C doesn't convey any sense of ferocity or anything close here?
No.
Oh, well, luckily you guys came out in force on Twitter with plenty of suggestions that capture the epicness of the group. And those range from C is for craziness to OMG WTF, and then my favorite, Bloodbath & Beyond.
Yeah, well, a lot of you are referring to Group C as the group of death. At best, Rollock sent in mid lane madness, which we actually think fits rather nicely, and we'll explain why a little later. Let's take a look at the 4 teams in the group. First is the number 2 team from the European LCS, it's Fnatic, along with the number 1 team from Korea, Samsung Blue.
Next is the number 3 squad from the North American LCS, LMQ, and finally the number 3 team from China's LPL, OMG.
So we'll start with the number 3 team from the North American LCS. It's LMQ. And now, Freak, you've actually watched these guys play all year long. What do you think about the team and the chances at Worlds?
Honestly, LMQ are very good, and I actually love their story. It's kind of the American dream. They moved to America from China, brand new lineup. They started in the Challenger Series, and they absolutely dominated the Challenger Series from start to finish. They won basically everything you could have. Qualified for the LCS, stayed top 2 in the LCS the entire season, and then made it to the playoffs. And aside from one 5-game loss to TSM, steamrolled through the playoffs, looked great there, number 3 seed overall, an incredibly good lineup. And let's actually take a look at that starting 5. In the top lane is Ackerman. Last year, he was known as Godlike on Royal Club, was a finalist for the World Championship last year. The jungler is No Name, he's the primary shot caller. Mid laner is Xiao Wei Xiao. AD carries Vasily, and supporting is Moore.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this lineup, there has to be some emphasis and focus on Xiao Wei Xiao. I think he did a really good job in the NALCS. And Crepa, what's your take on this player?
See, when I initially thought about Xiao Wei Xiao, I thought a very passive mid laner that goes for farm, has a really high GPM as well. You look at the stats right there on your screen, a lot of gold, the highest in the NALCS. But then if you look at his kills, apparently he has like 114 kills, which is also higher, and it's a lot higher than I expected. However, I can see that happening because I remember playing against them, and they would basically, once he came out of farm mode, they would switch him to the bottom lane and let him play assassins, like LeBlanc back in the day, and let him use rack up kills that way. So I'm looking forward if LMQ is going to repeat that with the resurgence of the assassin metagame.
We'll have to see if he can get his hands on it. Somebody else who picks up a lot of kills is Vasily. Probably the most aggressive AD carry in North America. Double lift, yes or no, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when Vasily came to North America, he just kind of exploded onto the AD carry scene. Everyone kind of looked up to him for laning. And if I had to describe him in 2 words, unrelenting aggression. This guy never stops fighting, never stops moving forward. So his style is very unique, and I feel like he helped the NA AD carries kind of progress into a more aggressive and less farm-reliant style.
All right, next up, it is the number 2 seed from the European LCS. It's Fnatic. Fnatic is going to be one of the most recognized teams in the Western scene. They were the Season 1 World Champions, and then when the LCS started, they won the first 3 European splits back to back to back. In the midst of all that, they also had a semi-final placement during last year's World Championship. I think there's a lot of pedigree in this roster, and there's even more expectation on their shoulders coming into this World Championship.
Oh, absolutely. Fnatic started out the last World Championship with a bang. They dropped 1 game during the group stage, including beating out big titans like Gambit or Samsung Ozone, now Samsung White this year around. They took out Cloud9 in the quarterfinals. They finally did lose to Royal Club in the semis, but that's still a top 4 at Worlds, which is incredibly impressive. Now they're back at Worlds for the 3rd time as a team. They've got a new AD carry and Reckless. It's a pretty incredible lineup. Let's actually check out their 5 starters here. In the top laner, Soaz, a great Frenchman there. He's known for all kinds of crazy things top lane. Some good, some bad. We'll see if it works out for him. Cyanide, one of the players who's been with Fnatic since Season 1. FLICKR also the same in the mid lane there, been with the roster the whole time. Reckless, the new guy this year on AD carry, and Yellowstar, his 4th trip to Worlds, twice as AD carry, twice as support.
Yeah, talking about players who've been around the scene a long time, FLICKR himself, Season 1 World Champion. He's been playing for an extended period of time, and this is a guy I think everybody's going to be looking at the World Championship. He was famous for that Kassadin backdoor where he managed to take down SK's Nexus. I've had the pleasure of casting him, and he's got an incredibly deep champion pool with an immense amount of skill on a massive array of champions. We'll see if he can pull it out. The only question is it going to be better than Gamescom? Because he was looking a little shaky at the European Regional Playoffs. Reckless is a player I want to talk about, but I want to ask Crepo your opinion on Reckless, because you've known him for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, I really like Reckless a lot. He's like a little brother to me. I've helped him a lot with stuff here and there, and I was so happy that he could finally got into LCS and basically show the world how good of a player he is. If I recall correctly, he tied the record for most kills with ManCloud, but at the same time, he had the very least amount of deaths, and he got that award at Gamescom for it as well. And it's just impressive how few times he dies, how well he positions. People always call him like, he farms too much, he doesn't help his team enough, but getting those stats in an entire split is very impressive, and I'm definitely looking forward to how his laning phase will go together with Bora, and because I played against them and they were pretty damn good in lane.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he has grown. Reckless has been quite outspoken about doing better in some of these weak areas. Now let's send it halfway around the globe to Joshua Jat Leesman, who's hanging out with 2 players, Fnatic's FLICKR and Cyanide, and they'll be wearing their new Season 1 Championship rings during this year's Worlds.
Thank you very much, Quickshot, and I'm joined here by FLICKR and Cyanide from the Season 1 World Championship Fnatic team. You guys actually just recently received your World Championship rings. Talk to me about kind of what that means.
First of all, the ring is pretty cool, obviously, and I don't know, I got really excited when they told us that we would actually get the ring, because I never expected the ring, I never really care about the ring, but it's super cool to have something that in the future you can look at and save it in your stand or something and look at it and be like, that means something, It's better than know that you want it, you can actually look and see something that reminds you of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cyanide, along with the ring, you guys also are getting some championship skins. Are there anything you're particularly going to want to play?
Well, obviously Javan, since it's like my skin. But yeah, I remember when like Season 2, I was super jelly, like TPA was getting like rings and skins and stuff. Like obviously it wasn't as big in Season 1, but I find it really cool that Riot made us the skins anyway and gave us the rings at some point.
And with that 2nd place finish in Europe, you guys were drawn into Group C, which many people have coined the group of death. Every team in that group at some point was considered the strongest team in the region. Cyanide, how do you see that group just being so strong?
Yeah, like I think all the teams have potential to be really good, and so we will see if actually all the teams, like obviously Blue is going to be incredibly strong already, and then OMG and LMQ, we will see about them, but I think if they train really hard and they are in their top form, it's going to be even really hard to defeat them.
Obviously watching so much of Group A and B, and then prepping so much for your own group, knowing a little bit about Group D, if you had to just choose one team at Worlds that you'd want to play against the most, who would it be and why?
Well, I would like to say White because they are so good, but I think it would be really hard to beat them because they're just so damn good.
We would like to play white at the finals, let's say it like that.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. With all that though, winning the Season 1 World Championship, semifinals in Season 3, what would it mean to you guys to actually win the World Championship this year?
Well, I don't know. It will be just crazy compared to like last year already. We were so happy that we made it to semifinal because at least for me it's about performing good. Because once you perform your best, if the other team does better, you feel a bit bad, but you don't feel bad in the sense that you are like, if I played a bit better, if we trained a bit more, we could have won. So for me, the goal is to try to give our best, and after the game, don't have a bad flavor that you could have done better. That's the goal. And of course, if you win and you play your best, I think it's just the feeling. At the moment you win, you don't even think about it. It's completely crazy, the excitement you get. So.
Well, for me last year, I was a bit disappointed after we lost, like obviously, but I was also really happy since we made it really far and we beat NA, so that's what it really matters. But just kidding, but still, yeah, I was really happy we made it so far, but I would have desired to go even to the finals and play there on the big stadium.
Thank you very much, Peke and Cyanide. It was great talking to you guys. For now, though, we're going to send it back to Quickshot and the guys at the analyst desk to talk more about Group C.
Thank you very much, chat. Those rings certainly look awesome. On the topic of the Fnatic skins, you guys at home will be able to pick those up very, very soon. So at the very least, you can look like one of the pros while you're playing. I want to keep this tour of Group C on the road. So let's take a look at the #1 team from Korea. It is Samsung Blue. 2014 saw Dade transition from their sister team to mid laner for Blue. And this really did usher in a year of dominance for the #1 seed.
It absolutely did. Once Dade joined Samsung Blue, the team went on an absolute tear through 2014. They won Champion Spring, they took second place in Champion Summer. This gave Blue enough circuit points to earn that team the #1 seed from Korea heading into the World Championship. Obviously an incredible group of 5. Let's check out their starting roster now. In the top lane is Acorn, in the jungle is Spirit, in the mid lane is Dade, that new guy. At the AD carry is Deft, many call him the best in the world, and supporting is Heart.
Yeah, and I think talking about the transition mid laner, you have to ask questions about Dade. He was the player in my mind that really cost his team Worlds last year in the group stages. And Monty, Dade has a lot of hype once again coming into Worlds. What's your take?
Yeah, I wonder too, is Name the Dade of this year, this very dominant player who comes in and kind of chokes at Worlds? We'll see in the quarterfinals. But Dade, I mean, we look at this guy, he has been in all of the finals this entire year, winter, spring, and summer, on 2 different teams. So we're really looking at a very consistent, very dominant player, and I can't wait to see him this year. I think he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder after what happened last year, and I think he's eager to prove himself.
Yeah.
And if we talk about Dade too, we look at his team fighting skills, right? He's not the most dominant player in lane, and like Dade, it's about deft on the team as well. Another player not so dominant in the laning phase, but incredible in terms of positioning in those team fights, and man, is this guy good at kind of skill shot AD carries. So really excited to see him moving forward, and looking forward to those 5v5 and Siege comps from Samsung Blue that I know so well.
Deft is also like the ultimate skill shot dodger. His side steps are like very Faker-esque, if not even better. It's amazing to watch him operate in fights and just slightly step a little to the left, a little to the right, and just continue to like wreak havoc.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to keep our eyes on Deft to see how many skill shots he can dodge when we get to the games. But before that, we've got one more team to talk about in this group, and that brings us to the #3 seed from the China's LPL. It is OMG. OMG have actually had a very strong year in the LPL. After making some name changes to their players and positional swaps at the beginning of the season, they have consistently finished in the top 3 of the LPL throughout 2014 and took 3rd place at the Chinese regionals to earn their trip to Worlds.
And this is the 2nd Worlds trip in a row for OMG. Last year they went beast mode of the group stage. They only dropped a single game, including going 1-1 against SK Telecom T1K, who also demolished everyone, and they actually won the whole World Championship. So in the quarterfinals, though, OMG, their run was cut short. They got taken out by fellow LPL team Royal Club, who went to the finals themselves. So they've only lost to the best teams in the world that year. But we're going to see if OMG can reverse their fortune and do even better this time and this year. In the top lane is Going. In the jungle is Leveling, formerly known as Drug, Allen, or Loveland. In the mid lane is Cool. At the AD carry is San. And supporting is Dada777, also known as Coma last year.
Well, let's keep things a little bit frosty and talk about OMG's mid laner Cool. Doublelift, what's your take on this player and his style?
Well, I really like to play with him at All-Stars. He was a really nice guy. He's also a very violent guy with 168 kills in the LPL regular season, the most of any mid laner. Then he played at LPL playoffs, 3rd place. Doesn't mean he won every game. He obviously lost a ton. He's still the led kills in the LPL playoffs of any position, any player. This guy's extremely good. He's a playmaking, considered the best mid laner in China for his playmaking ability. Obviously, super bloodthirsty guy. I'm looking forward to see him play.
He's been actually just incredible. And one guy I got to talk about as well, this team is pretty solo lane focused. It's their top laner going. He's just been awesome as well. One thing I want to share about him is in the Chinese summer LPL playoffs, they played Royal Club in 2 different BO5s. Both went to all 5 games. So 10 games against Royal Club. 28 of the 30 bans from Royal were aimed at going. This is a scary, scary top laner who's going to pull out the Maokai and Alistar, but also carries like Jax and Aurelia. It's going to be a lot of fun watching him play.
Yeah, we'll need to see if Going pulls out the Jax. Anyways, it is time to freeze the minions and head over to the Telestrator, where Monte Cristo is ready to dissect the mids in the laning phase.
Thank you, Quickshot. The aptly named Group of Death will undoubtedly see some fierce battles this week, and I believe whoever wins the mid lane will come out on top. So let's take a quick look at how I rank the 4 players who will be front and center for Group C. Number 4, it's going to be LMQ's Xiaowei Zhao. Despite this summer being his first split in the North American LCS, he led the league in kills by a mid laner and won the summer split most valuable player. That said, he is a very farm-dependent mid laner, and he has less playmaking ability than the other mids in this group. He's also not up against the toughest competition in North America. At number 3, we're going for Fnatic's Peke. He is one of the top mid laners in Europe, and of course his name has become synonymous with backdooring a Nexus thanks to his famous Kassadin win. Although he is an assassin player and the meta is shifting back in his favor, he's overshadowed by the 2 other players in this group purely because of increased playmaking ability. Number 2 is going to be OMG's Cool. He did have a great showing at last year's Worlds, keeping up with FLICKR in lane and proving a lot of his abilities. He did tear through the group stage last year. It's going to be a little bit harder this year. He's the best mid laner in China. He kept up his performance throughout the LPL this year, and he really has hard carried his team. He got as many as 20 kills in a game in the playoffs in the LPL. And especially on OMG, they're a very solo lane dependent team. He is the rock that they kind of build their foundation on. But of course, with one top or mid laner left, that is going to be Dade in Group C, of course. Who's your Dade? He's at number 1. He is number 1 on this list because he has been to 3 consecutive Champions Finals this year, 2 different teams, won a season MVP award, and he is an extremely dominant player in spite of his limited champion pool, to the degree that he has champions like Zed that he can pull out, that he has a 17-2 professional record on. It's pretty much a death sentence if you let him pick Zed. He did have a lackluster performance at Worlds last year, but he has returned to form. He's gotten even better, and I expect a much more impressive performance from him this year because he's probably the most consistent player in Korean history. So that's going to be the breakdown for Group C in the mid lane. I can't wait to keep my eyes on the matchups over the next 4 days. Quickshot, back to you, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that either. Thank you very much. That is a definitely powerful lineup of players that everyone will have to be watching. You've heard how Monte Cristo ranks the mid laners in Group C, but you don't have to agree with him. We'd like to know how you would stack up these mid laners. So head over to Twitter and tell us how you would rank them and why. Send your responses to @LOL Esports along with the hashtag Worlds Preview. Now, one group of guys that absolutely agrees with Monty is his teammates on Samsung Blue. And even though the star mid laner left the world's battlefield early last year, this time around, Dade is determined to show the world why he's called the General.
네, 안녕하세요. 삼성 블루팀의 미드라이너를 맡고 있는 다데 배어진입니다. 저를 수식하는 여러 말들이 있죠. 인간 제드라던가 장군이라던가. 누가 먼저 시작한 건지 잘 모르겠지만 장군이라는 별명에 대해서 평소에 신경 쓰진 않습니다.
제 생각에 엄청나게 많이 의식하고 있는 것 같아요. 뜨거운 이제 여름날에도 자켓을 입고 있잖아요. 그런 게 보면은 망토 이렇게 들은 대장군 포스처럼 이렇게 느낌이 있으려고 걸음걸이도 약간 다가가면 한 대 맞겠다 이런 느낌의 풍채를 풍기면서 걷고. 다들 듣고 있네. 8강까지가 그때 당시 오존팀의 최고 성적이었는데 다대 선수가 들어오고 나서 바로 우승을 했고
MVP 미드 다대입니다.
다대 선수가 평소 연습 때보다 대회 때 거의 한 2배, 3배는 목소리도 크게 하고 말도 많이 해요. 그만큼 이기고 싶은 거죠. 누구보다도 더.
충격이었죠. 롤드컵을 그렇게 빨리 탈락할 줄은 정말 몰랐고 제가 할 수 있었던 건 새로 준비한 그라가스와 리산드라였는데
제가 지금 와서 정말 냉철하게 분석을 하면 다대는 기본적으로 장군이기 때문에 칼 하나 정도는 들고 있어야 되는데 그라가스를 여러분 보세요. 굉장히 둔해 보이고 칼을 들고 있지도 않고 뭔가 뚜렷하게 잘생기지도 않았습니다. 당연히 질 수밖에 없었죠.
감독님의 속마음까진 모르겠지만 사실 굉장히 기분이 나빴습니다.
그때는 불러도 못하는 시절이었잖아요. 좌천됐다고 많이 느꼈을 것 같아요.
삼성블루는 정확히 이 상황에서 어떻게 해야 되고 이런 부분에 대한 결정을 하는 사람이 없더라고요. 고민 끝에 바꾸게 됐죠.
처음에는 솔직히 서로 의견도 잘 안 맞고 많이 힘들어가지고 트러블도 많이 나고 그랬었는데 우리 장군님께서 딱 들어오시고 난 다음부터 한순간에 갑자기 우승, 뭐 마스터즈 우승 뭐 난리 났잖아요. 팀의 중심을 잡아주는 역할을 진짜 잘 수행해주고 있는 것 같아요.
그 한타 때 우리가 이거 이겨줘라는 판단을 다대 선수가 합니다. 냉철하게 보는 눈이 다대한테 있는 것 같아요.
뭐가 됐든 간에 블루에 와서 우승을 한 거고 결국 잘 되긴 했죠. 어떤 때나 미드라이너들을 거론할 때 제 이름이 빠지지 않는 그런 선수가 되고 싶어요. 뭐 한국에서는 제가 장군이라고 불리는데 외국 시청자분들께도 제가 왜 장군이라고 불리는지 똑똑히 알려드리겠습니다.
Wow, those are some strong words from Dade.
Yeah, Dade's a really interesting player. After or between games, a lot of the times when I'm casting at OGN, you see the players kind of get together and talk, have a little conversation in between matches. But Dade, Blue just kind of lets him go off by himself. He'll spend some alone time, walk outside, stand by himself, recollect himself before coming into the booth. Very intense player, very focused and self-reflective.
Yeah, definitely takes the game quite seriously. And, you know, take away from that piece, he was saying he wants his name in the discussion when mid laners are being talked about, and he wants everyone else to ask, who's your Dade? Right, we've taken a look at the teams in Group C, and it is time to lay it on the line. So, gentlemen, which two teams do you think will be advancing to the quarterfinals and why? We're going to start with Monte Cristo. We know you're picking Samsung Blue. Who is the second team from this group to advance and why?
Well, realistically, everybody is going to pick Samsung Blue. It's really a battle for second place here. I don't think LMQ has what it takes, but OMG and Fnatic are a little bit closer. I'm going to take Fnatic here just because I think they can stack up a little bit in terms of the solo lanes, but the big difference is going to be Reckless and Yellowstar, who I think will be dominant in the bottom lane. Sun and Dada have not been looking too good over the course of the last few weeks of the LPL and the regionals, and that's going to be the difference.
Well, talking about the AD carries, Double Lift, you're next on my hit list. Who are your two teams advancing and why?
Well, Samsung Blue is the obvious #1, but I think I'm going to surprise some people by picking Fnatic as my #2. I'm a huge Reckless fanboy, actually. I've been talking to him on and off for like a year or so. And I just feel like Fnatic's solo laners have always been the kind of players to step up when it actually matters. It is a battle for second place between Fnatic and OMG for me, but Fnatic's the clear #2.
Crepo, predictions, 1 and 2, who's it going to be and why?
Yeah, I'm definitely going with Blue first. I mean, everything has been mentioned already, but the battle for second place is going to be really interesting. I think OMG has one of the better, if not the best, solo laners combined as a pairing outside of Korea. But then again, like Xpeke and Soaz will be able to hold their own, while their bot lane should just outmatch OMG's bot lane completely. Barring any upset or just swings from LMQ, Fnatic should be the second team in this group.
All right, so Freak, is it going to be a clean sweep? Is it Blue and Fnatic all down the line?
No, so of course, yes, Samsung Blue, right? I can repeat what you guys said, but you guys got it right. My second team is going to be OMG, though. I think OMG is stronger. Remember, this is basically the same team that went to Worlds last year. The only games they even lost were to the #1 and #2 teams. at the World Championship last year. Like, OMG had an unfortunately short run in Season 3, but they're incredibly strong. Cool is ridiculous. I think everyone's going to know his name, maybe even more so than Dada, because he is the carry here. And so it's going to be fun to watch OMG.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they perform. And just food for thought, Fnatic did not look too great at the EU playoffs. Right, we would like to turn back the dial a full year and time travel to the Season 3 World Championship, but without the aid of a DeLorean, a British police box, or an excellent adventure. We're going to rely on the brawn of your brains.
So in other words, let's see how well you guys remember those games from last year with a little Worlds trivia. Rack your gray matter and see if you can remember who was the most played champion during the 2013 World Championship.
Yeah, tweet your answers to us at LOL Esports with the hashtag Worlds Preview, and we'll see what your memories are made of and check out your answers on the next preview show. Now, let's go back to the future and shift our focus to the 4 teams that make up Group D. And once again, we're going to harness your hive mind for a slightly better group name.
Right, so Group D sounds solid, like the kids who got picked last for the kickball team, so maybe not so good. But thanks to all the power on Twitter, you guys came through with some terrific suggestions like Don't Blink.
Yeah, we had a tie for our favorites, and we decided to combine them.
Yeah, so the majority of you agreed that there were 3 favorites in this group, and we chose to call that Triple Threat, and that got at Kawaii Ganjin, who got that one together. But because we love the underdog so much, we chose Blue Shell Kaboom from at Gentleman Gustav. That means Group D shall henceforth be known as Triple Threat Blue Shell Kaboom.
Yeah, I actually know what a blue shell is after learning it last week on air. Now, here are those 3 teams and a video game reference that I'm totally aware of. So, first is the number 2 team from the North American LCS. It is Cloud9, along with the number 1 team from the European League Championship Series, Alliance.
Next is the international wild card team from Brazil, Kaboom Esports, and the number 3 team from Korea, Najin White Shield.
Yeah, all right. Up first on our tour of the group is the international wildcard team, Brazil's Kaboom Esports. Kaboom has been one of the top teams in Brazil throughout 2014. They've made it to the Brazilian League Champions Series playoffs 3 times in a row, but they came away without a top 3 finish each time.
However, the team stepped up this year. They took first place at the Brazil Regional, and that earned them the spot to the International Wildcard Tournament, where they 3-0'd Latin American team PEX Gaming, and they became the first Brazilian team to compete at Worlds. Let's take a look now at their roster. In the top lane is Lep, in the jungle is Danagorn, mid lane Tin Owns, AD carry Minerva, and supporting is Dance.
Yeah, and I think I just want to highlight Tin Owns personally, because I think he's one of the mid lane prodigies that came out to the Brazilian server. His Orianna is phenomenal, and he ended up with a 7.8 KDA during the course of their international wildcard tournament run. It's definitely a player that Kaboom are going to be looking at to carry them and work alongside. But it's the shot caller Dan's that is standing out and has had a lane swap that allowed him to grow. Freak, do you care to add?
Yes, he's a converted AD carry player there. He's filling up the shot calling role for the team, and he's been incredible overall, right? He had a great KD during the international wild card as well. So far, so good for this team. And what I love so much about this Brazilian team is that a little bit like China and North America, where they started importing a whole bunch of foreign players, this is a team that stuck with an all-Brazilian lineup and shot past all these sort of Korean-laden rosters and have done so well with the homegrown talent pool, and it's been great to see him go.
Yeah, talking about importing some Korean talent, let's talk about the Korean team in this group, and it is the number 3 squad from the region, Najin White Shield. Najin White Shield has been one of Korea's top 5 teams all year long, but their strongest finish came when they took 2nd place in Champions Spring.
And their point total narrowly qualified them to compete in the Korean regionals, but they swept the KT Bullets 3-0, they swept the KT Arrows 3-0, and then they took down defending world champions SK Telecom T1K 3-1 in the final match, and they earned that last spot at Worlds for Korea. Let's check out the starting lineup now. In the top lane, Save, one of the best top laners in the world, absolutely. In the jungle is Watch, the mid lane is Goong, AD carry Zephyr, and support Gorilla, the original OG Janna.
And the mid lane trend will continue, as Goong is one of our players to watch. Monty, we always throw the Korean information. What's your thoughts on Goong and, this squad?
Yeah, Goong is a very interesting player. He's very mechanically adept, but he's always had a very small champion pool. When Nidalee and LeBlanc got nerfed, we did see Shield kind of fall back off. Now he's resurged with Zed, with Ahri, with Orianna. And that's what he showed very dominant play on during regionals. Is he going to be able to be easily banned out? That's kind of the question moving into the Group D games.
Yeah, and I've got another question, because I know you've got a little bit of a man crush on the top laner Save. So tell me a little bit more about why you like Save so much.
You know, I refer to Save as the last of the top carries. He and Flame are very much at the top of their game. And this guy is just ridiculous. Huge KDA, 7.81 during the Korean regional finals, and he had that 100% win rate on Kayle. Very, very dangerous on Ryze as well. Can play unorthodox top lane carries like Kha'Zix and Zed. You don't know what this guy is going to bring out, but watch for him to have very good teleports and a just hard carry from the top lane.
Just a little bit of pressure there from Monte Cristo on his shoulders. Right, this is going to bring us to the number 2 team from North America. It is Cloud9. Cloud9 have been one of the most dominant teams in the LCS ever since they earned their way in last summer. And this marks the team's 2nd trip in a row to Worlds after Fnatic knocked them out in the quarterfinals last year.
Yeah, a bit of a short run there in the 2013 World Championship, but they came back. They took 1st place in this spring split this year, and although their rivals Team Solomid finally beat them for the first time in the playoffs, these guys still took 2nd place in the playoffs. Pretty darn good overall. Let's take a look now at their starting 5 roster. In the top lane is Balls, in the jungle is Meteos, High is their mid laner, AD carry Sneaky, and supporting is Lemonation.
Yeah, this is the team that's been doing very well in Korean solo queue. I want to ask a little bit about Sneaky, Doublelift. Sneaky's sort of one of the quieter AD carries from North America. How's he going to do on the world stage?
So before, I felt like he took a back seat. He wasn't really a carry, like a big force to be reckoned with. His job was primarily just to go even in lane and just kind of shine in team fights or later stages of the game with rotations. But nowadays, he really stepped up. His laning has improved a lot. His synergy with Lemon has gotten to the point where they're actually consistently winning lane. And their mid-game rotations are just all focused around the AD carry, actually. Sneaky's getting a lot of farm, a lot of kills, and stepping up.
I mean, that backseat point actually ties back to Meteos as well. He was known as a jungler that used to farm a lot and just had this stigma around him that he would never gank. But he stepped up his game, diversified his plays, and just improved his champion pool. At the start of the year, his Lee Sin wasn't good. He even said that himself. He kept playing it because he was smart enough to play that champion without even having mechanical proficiency. But he stepped up his Lee Sin game. He has a better champion pool right now, and he's just a really smart jungler. So I'm looking forward to see him perform on the world stage.
And I actually want to see if they've added some more strategic diversity to the roster, because every single game in playoffs, they just lane swap Sneaky and waited for team fights. I want to see what else they've learned this time around and see if they can do something new at Worlds this year.
Well, they've had a lot of time in Korea to learn those new tricks. Another team that has will be the last team in this group. It is the number 1 squad from the European LCS. It is Alliance. Alliance is the super team that was put together by Froggen last December after his teammates and Evil Geniuses left to join the North American LCS.
And they actually had a pretty rough start to the spring series of 2014. They finished in 4th place in the playoffs, but this summer they've worked out a lot of the issues. They started dominating the European LCS. They even dethroned Fnatic for the first time as king of the splits. They took 1st place in summer playoffs. They're the number 1 team in Europe right now. Let's take a look at their starting lineup. In the top lane is Wicked. In the jungle is Shook. Mid laner is Froggen, to put the team together. Tabs AD carry, and supporting is Nif.
Yeah, I think you hit a really good point there discussing Froggen, and it is his team. He feels a lot of pressure to perform, and this team was put together to win. Quoting him directly, Froggen is a player that is potentially considered to be one of the world's best mid laners. Crepo, you've had the pleasure of knowing him for many, many years. How excited will he be to be back on the international stage?
I think he will be very excited and just wants to prove to the world that he's still a solid top-tier mid laner. I mean, I've known him for a while. Let's call it what it is. Our team wasn't good enough anymore at that point, and he said, hey guys, we're good friends, but I want to move on. I want to try my own thing. And with all respect, he's very outspoken in that regard. He's very honest. So that's why we're still good friends right now. And I wish him the best, but it's going to be really hard for their team to match up against some of the other teams in this group.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they do. Somebody who's a little less outspoken, but equally talented, maybe. Tabs in the AD carry role. Doublelift. Have you watched much of Tabs? What do you think of his style and his play?
I have watched much of Tabs because he's actually getting more and more outspoken within the community, and he's a really solid AD carry. He's just been kind of overshadowed in terms of statistics. He's got less kills, he's got a worse KDA, and he's got a really strong champion pool, but not quite as good as Reckless throughout the regular split. But actually in the playoffs, he had a higher KDA than Reckless and performed, in my opinion, a little bit better. So I'll see how well he does on the world stage. This is his 2nd time returning. He's no stranger to going to Worlds. He went with the 1st place team again last year with Lemon Dogs. So I feel like Tabs has a lot to prove.
All right, with that, it is now time to leave the base again and take a look at the lanes as Monte Cristo leads us into the laning phase.
Thanks, Quick Shot. When considering the teams in Group D, I have to keep the focus on the mid lane once again, just like Group C. So let's check out the players in that role and see where they rank here at laning phase. Number 4 probably won't come as a surprise. Tin Owns from Kaboom. He's definitely the strongest laner in his region. Unfortunately, that region is still up and coming, and we're talking about the World Championship here, so he is going to be overshadowed by the other mids in this group. Number 3, I'm going with Hai. Hai's obviously a very strong shot caller, but is a bit weak when it comes to his laning in his champion pool. Now, I do think we'll see an improved Hai due to his time in Korean solo queue. I think out of any player who went to a boot camp in Korea, he had the most to gain. Number 2, going to be Goong from Najin Whiteshield. He had a strong performance throughout the Korean regionals due to his mechanical skill, and he was instrumental to taking down last year's world champs, but he still has that small champion pool that's plagued him. He's also been rather inconsistent over the course of the year, and I feel he could be targeted out with bans if he hasn't broadened his pool in the last few weeks. Number 1, it's going to be Froggen from Alliance. He's one of the top mid laners in the world, certainly. He comes into this series with a very large champion pool and that consistency that we look for in top players across metas. He plays a very calculated style, he knows his limits very well, and he's always relevant in game. So that's going to be your laning phase for Group D. Quick shot, back to you.
Thank you very much, Monty. Once again, I'd like to hear from you whether or not Monte Cristo was right or wrong. Let us know what you think by ranking these mid laners and also telling us why. You can send your answers to @LOL Esports with the hashtag Worlds Preview on Twitter. Let's stay in the mid lane, although this time that mid lane is a hell of a far way away in Singapore, where Rivington Bisland III sat down with Cloud9's captain, Hai.
Thanks, Quick Shot. And right now I'm happy to be joined by Cloud9's captain and shot caller, Hai. How's it going?
What's up, dude? Just got here in Singapore. It's pretty hot.
Right on. Well, let's get right to it. This is your second trip coming into the World Championship. What's the difference between last year's championship and coming into this one?
Well, a few things. First off, we get to play more than 3 games this year, so I'm happy for that. And we're also over in Asia. Last year we were back in LA playing right next to where we live, and now I'm all over here in Singapore. Never been here before and playing a game I love.
Right on. And how are you guys actually feeling about that group stage? Because you guys usually seeded out of it, now you got to play. What are you thinking?
I'd like to say our group is pretty hard. There's obviously 3 favorite teams to come out, Najin Shield, us, and Alliance. Basically, when we got second place at playoffs, that made our group, or our possibility of getting our groups, much harder. So it's kind of our punishment, I guess, for not taking first.
Speaking about that second place, it's the first time since Cloud9 has been in the LCS that you guys don't grab the title. What was the feeling of the team?
I think it depended per person. Some people were more mad, some people were more sad, some people were just like, it happens. Or they just weren't expecting to win anyway, just because how practice was going. So depending on who you ask, they'll give you a different answer.
All right, and obviously everybody, as fast as they could, took off, got to the boot camp in Korea. What were the benefits? What did you guys draw from that?
So we got to practice for 3 weeks in Korea. We learned a lot here. If we got to stay here for another year, I'm sure we could compete against the best Korean teams over and over. But we only got a limited amount of time to practice against them, and the limited amount of time we did get, we've learned a lot in 3 weeks here.
And while you guys were boot camping in Korea, did you guys figure out that you needed to focus more on Cloud9 or focus more on the teams you were competing against?
We had to focus on what they were doing to beat us, basically. So we look at what they're doing and be like, hey, how are they doing this? Why are we like losing? What are they doing better than us? And then we learn from it and try to fix the problems that we were doing. And it went pretty well, actually.
And which team are you guys looking forward to face at Worlds if you get the chance?
Well, I want to win Worlds, so obviously I don't want to play versus a Korean team, but sadly there's one in our group and you'd have to face when you get to the finals anyway. So I guess I'd like to play versus Blue as the most, just because they are on our side of the bracket, and I want to play versus Dade.
All right, Hai, final question. What would it mean to you, to the team, to win Worlds?
To win Worlds, we haven't thought about that because it's a far stretch, but in the case it did, it basically make us losing at playoffs not matter anymore. It would show the world that the Western teams can actually compete against the best teams, and it would give me a lot of money to go do things and have fun.
All right, Hai, thank you very much for hanging out with us today, and best of luck to you and the team at Worlds. And right now, we're going to go ahead and send it back to Quickshot and the guys at the desk to go over more matches in Group D.
Thank you very much, guys. Interesting video. One of the things I like whenever I hear from Cloud9 and Hai in particular, they're very introspective and relatively down to earth whenever they analyze their own play, their own skills, and their own power. Talking about play, skills, and power, it's time to go down the line and find out from you guys who you think will be advancing from Group D to the quarterfinals. We'll do it in reverse of Group C, so I'll start with Freak. Who is your top 2 teams and why?
Well, the first thing is not going to be reversed. The Korean team is going to top the group. I think no one's really surprised here. Najin White Shield are incredibly strong, especially that run down the Korean regional where they like 3-0'd KT Arrows, who was like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. Suddenly they get 3-0'd by these guys. So ridiculously strong team overall. My number 2 is going to be Cloud9. I think they underperformed a little bit in playoffs. Just seeing them advance in Korean solo queue, like 3 of their players are in like the top, like, are playing so many, like if you rank like the LCS players coming over to Korea playing solo queue, 3 of them are in the top 5 here. They're playing a whole lot. They're incredibly dedicated, and I think they're going to go far.
Crepo, you're next on my hit list. Who's 1 and who's 2?
Yeah, I obviously think White Shield is just going to win the group all out. So the second place is, again, really the important one. It's either going to be Alliance or Cloud9. Initially, I would have taken Alliance, but right now I'm feeling Cloud9 just by a little bit, like a 55 to 45 split. I think Cloud9 is going to perform a little better if they patch up a lot of their problems. Also, just in terms of individual power, I think Balls, that matchup against Wicked is something I want to watch. I want to see how those bot lanes match up. They're so equal. I want to see if Hai can handle Frog, and there's so many interesting matchups. But I think overall, in terms of team play, strategic like prowess, I think Cloud9 is just going to come out on top.
So once again, similar votes. Double lift. Is there any chance that Alliance is going to beat either Najin Shield or Cloud9 in your mind? Who's your 1 and 2 and why?
Well, my number 1, again, is Shield, like you guys say, for all the reasons that you guys said. But my number 2, Cloud9. I didn't believe in TSM and when I should have, and I definitely believe in Cloud9 now. My mind has kind of changed. I think the matchup to kind of watch out for between them and Alliance is the jungle, because Meteos is so dedicated and just so good. He's always been so consistent, where to me, Shook is pretty hit or miss, and he relies a lot on Froggen to do most of the work, and then Shook can kind of get in there and play really aggressive, but Meteos is so cold and calculated. He's the KDA king, so while all of their other lanes kind of match up equally, I would say Meteos overshadows Shook just by a little bit, and so I give Cloud9 the edge.
So another one. We'll see if this is going to be a clean sweep. Monte Cristo, what is it about Shield that is going to give them the edge in this matchup, and who's your number 2?
Yeah, I do think Shield, especially when we talk about save, is going to come in number 1 in this group. But I will just kind of put a damper on some of these expectations. If I think that any Korean team might get tripped up here, it will be Shield. They've been kind of inconsistent this season. They went from the finals in Champions Spring to barely making it out of groups in Champions Summer, and then immediately losing to the KT Arrows. Also, when we look at regionals, that was the best I've ever seen Watch and Zephyr play, and there's no guarantee that they're going to step up that much again here at Worlds. So that's a little bit of a caveat. I still put them in number 1. Now, number 2, I'm going to agree with you guys. I think Cloud9 has this. I know from observing a lot of the boot camp that happened before I came out here to LA for the desk when everybody was in Korea, I know Cloud9 got the best practice out of all these teams. I also think they had the most to gain from this practice. And when we think about strategy, Cloud9 is the best Western team in terms of strategy, in terms of rotations. I'm going to take them by a hair, just a hair, over Alliance.
So, according to our analysts, it's a unanimous decision for 1 and 2, and that would mean the number 1 seed in the group would not advance. So, interesting thoughts here from the analyst desk.
I think it's funny that we're all unanimous about like ranting and raving over how good Cloud9 is. We're like, oh my god, Cloud9 is so good. 55-45. Alliance could do it. And that's like it.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how close you guys, the experts, are with those predictions as the games in Singapore kick off on Thursday at 11 a.m. Central European Summer Time, which is 2 a.m. Pacific. The first of Thursday's 6 matches features North America's LMQ taking on China's OMG, with Cloud9 facing Kaboom Esports to finish up day number 1.
And on Friday, Najin White Shield will face Alliance to start the day, and Samsung Blue takes on LMQ to close things out.
Yeah, and of course, starting on Saturday, the matches will shift to a new starting time, so please take note of that. It will begin with Fnatic versus OMG. That game will begin at 8 a.m. Central European Summer Time, which is actually 11 p.m. Friday. For those of you in the Pacific time zone, that is 3 hours earlier than normal.
And that same schedule is in effect for Sunday's games, where Kaboom Esports kicks off the final 6 matches when they take on Cloud9, and barring any more tiebreakers, we'll close out Singapore with a OMG versus LMQ battle.
We'll have to see how that turns out. To whet your appetite for the action ahead of this week in Singapore, let's take a look at some of the biggest plays that happened in Taipei, or as Imp can now call it, the Penta.
Number 5 coming in, it's going to be Samsung White with the impeccable outplay.
Oh, and the hook coming in towards BT. They pulled him into tower range. Oh, they're going to finish him off. One more auto attack would have done it. There he's in, going aggressive. He gets the kill on BT. Can he take on Endeavor as well? He can. And the lantern to escape to safety. Amazing.
Yeah, amazing indeed. Coming at number 4, it's Samsung White again, taking matters into their own hands.
Going in off Crystal, going to come around the side. Paul actually flashing over the wall. Damn easy going to fall. Oh, there's the shield from Soon as well. Crystal going over. He gets exhausted. They're both going to go down.
It's a good call, but look at Pawn. He flashes over, takes the Q. That saves him once. Then the shield saves him through the kick. And he's able to escape. Mata as well. He saves the exhaust until Crystal flashes over the wall for the chase.
And number 3, Wins blew everyone away with his Lee Sin mechanics.
Monsoon is running. Bubble comes down. Is Insect going to be able to get away? There's the knockup. Goes down as well. Korn now at less than half. Zero. Cola. Both the left and half. Kill that. Wings go through. And that is a 4 for 2. What the Taipei Assassins. Incredible.
What a huge swing for TPA. That turret going down and BB following up. The level advantage pays out big. They're able to get the kill, snowball into several pickups. That's not only going to be the turret, it's going to be the Dragon. Big boost here for TPA. Giant mid-game power spike.
All right, coming in at number 2, it's Insec with the Insec.
Whoa. Oh. Well, the Zillion ultimate's on him, but
can he leap away? That's the aggression that Starhorn Royal Club have been looking for, and it was all once again. The insect kick, it finally worked.
And the number 1 play from Taipei showed us that it was not impossible to get a pentakill.
Oh man, they are still going for this fight. A little bit of rush control is going to be good for this one. Double kill coming in for Imp. He keeps the shots coming. The triple kill for Imp. Looking for the quadra. And they are going to get it. The pentakill to come in for Imp. Pentakill!
Now we thought we'd have a little bit of fun. So it's time once again for the 2014 World Championship preview show, Mad Libs.
Oh, jeez, quick shot, please, no. I think we had enough suffering from that last time. I gotta stop you, man. Last week, I think I summed up how everyone on the desk feels watching those Mad Libs right now.
Whoa.
In contrast to Darby.
No.
In contrast to Darby. So, explain why, what do you think? Yeah, I'm not going to fight for them either. Right, I see how it is. Rest in Pepperoni's League of Mad Libs. So instead of everyone's favorite segment, we're actually going to leave you with a music video that was created specifically for Worlds by OMG that shows a different side of the 2-minute tower diving, team fighting starting LPL powerhouse. Here are Go Going and OMG with our last hit.
心中的无法